As I was putting together the old movie clips featuring Ieleen, I had to make a decision on where to start from, so I decided I'd do it from this photograph, which is at 25 Shrewsbury Avenue, Aintree, Liverpool. At the time, Dad was senior officer at Walton Jail in Liverpool, and we were just going to move to the island of Sheppey, where he was going to become principal officer at East Church Prison. The photograph has my dad on the left and our Colin, then I'm at the front, aged 6, my mum is next holding Ian, and Ieleen is on the right. It was 1961 and Ieleen was aged 19. December 20th, 1964. It was my 10th birthday party and Ieleen and John Barris were there. Had some friends round, Colin and Ian there at the background. That's me at the front turning round. And then we sat around the Christmas tree. There's Ieleen with John Barris, Colin and Ian, a few friends, myself at the back. And there's John standing up. Then it was Christmas Day. Father Christmas coming up the 8 Orchard Close. Obviously Father Christmas was my dad. And those are prison officers pulling the sleigh. The Officers Club had presents bought by the parents, and they were delivered to all the houses. And there's Ieleen. Dad used to do that whether he was on duty or not. He'd go back to work afterwards. That's Colin and Ian waving. There's Ieleen with John. This is now Christmas Day. We've had Christmas dinner. This is just sitting with the presents, ready to open them. That's Colin and Ian. They've got new bikes. That's Ian on the left, Colin. I've got John Barris on my knee, Eileen's sitting next to me on the right. That's Mantiglad behind me. My dad's filming this. He used to have a light that shone on everything. He was using the movie camera so he could take movies indoors. It was the old Standard 8. No sound, of course. There's Michael, Ian, Colin, me, John, Mantiglad. Those are my dad sitting on the right. So Mum or Eileen's filming this. Probably my mum. This, I believe, was Boxing Day. Michael's running up and down the beach at Laysdown with Shep. That's myself. John Barris in the pushchair, Colin and Ian. As Michael was running along with Shep, I was running along with John on the prom. And John really loved it. Of course, he kept turning around to see where the camera was and where my dad was filming it. This was also at Christmas time, same Christmas area. We'd gone to our relatives. Peter Dodd, he was the red-haired gentleman at the beginning, was my cousin, Eileen's cousin. That's my mum, John Barris, Ieleen, Mantiglad sitting between mum and Mantiglad and Ieleen. There's Mick. Peter Dodd was the son of my mum's brother Tom and his wife May. That was Peter Dodd's wife. They'd lived in South Africa for a while. That was a little girl. She had red hair like Peter as well. This is at Park Avenue in Laysdown, Ieleen and Mick's house. It's Ieleen, my mum, my brothers Colin and Ian in the garden. And there's John on his mat, having one of his famous fast crawls. Boy, could he shift when he wanted to. He's playing with his kitten, or beating it to death. pointing at my dad with the camera. This was some of the prison officers and the wives. I think that was Mrs. Gadsby, not sure. Mrs. Barris at the front there, Michael's mum, my mum behind. I think that was Mrs. May to the left, Mrs. Poole in front of Mrs. Barris. I think that was Stan Partner, that was my dad. I think that's Mr. Barris there on the left. This is John Barris's second birthday, and that's a cake. This is the bonfire, November 5th. As a kid we used to have a lot of fun building this. We used to have dens in it and climb all over it. Of course, big event for the prison. All the families there. Lots of fireworks. This is afterwards in our garden with our fireworks. There's Michael on the right. Ieleen stood behind the actual fireworks going off. This is the prison fire brigade. Some of the officers were volunteer fire brigade officers, and the fire engine would go out over the island. The siren that was used to call the prison officers on and off, the old Air Force siren, was also used for sounding the alert for the fire engine. Christmas time again. I believe this is 1966 because when you see Ieleen, she has Jason with her here, and I believe he's about 1. My dad on Father Christmas duty again. There's Jason with Ieleen. As I said, Dad on Father Christmas duty again. 8 Orchard Close. Mum made that Father Christmas outfit for him. It was the only person it would fit. This is my dad cutting Jason's hair in the back garden. This would be 1968, just before Ieleen and Mick moved from the Isle of Sheppey to Chipping. That was John in the garden. My dad was really patient. This is in our back garden at 8 Orchard Close. In fact, it could have been 8 Orchard Way then, because he opened it out that. That's Dad cutting John's hair. John didn't like his hair being cut. He used to screw his face up and he'd go, oh, Grandad, oh. Which you can probably tell by his facial expression, that's what he's saying. Oh, don't hurt. That's Colin and Ian. Dad's still cutting the hair. And that is Joanne, who was born March 1968. Dad's still cutting John's hair there. Jason's just tinkering over to have a little touch of Joanne. There we go, all 3 of the kids together. John taking Joanne and give her a cuddle. and Jason just toddling over. Lovely shot then. I remember it well. This is 1970. This is at the side of where we lived, prison quarters in Culcheth, when Dad had moved to Risley Remand as principal officer. There's Michael. Eileen and Michael were going to borrow our caravan. There's Jason climbing in. It was in the garages behind where our house was. And there's Jason bending over, my dad doing the feet on the caravan. Michael just going to wind up the trolley wheel. Dad and Michael moving it onto Michael's and Eileen's Zephyr 6. They had a blue one. Dad had a white one. Dad's, when the caravan goes out, you'll see Dad's one parked opposite our house. Our house is this one, the other side of this wall. We lived in here from 1969 till probably about 72. Before Mum and Dad got a council house in Culcheth. There's Eileen with the ball. John coming down, that's me in the orange shirt. That's our house on the right there. The prison garages for our street were at the back here. So Dad had a garage and we used to keep the caravan round there on a bit of open area. So there we go. There we go on the holidays. That's Dad's Zephyr. Our house is behind us here. And that was me just waving them off. Look at that. I'd probably about 18, 19 there. 17 should I say. 18. So, 1st of July 1978. Susan and I were getting married. Michael was my best man. Eileen was matron of honour. This is my mum, Auntie Glad. My uncle Benny was my godfather, and my Auntie May. Some of Sue's friends, relatives, Auntie Flo and Uncle Jid coming up, and some more of Sue's friends, relatives. This is Eileen as matron of honour, Joanne, and Sue's cousin Becky. That's Colin, who was one of the ushers. Jason and John's around somewhere, but Jason was like a little page boy, and so was John. This is my Auntie Marge, my godfather, Uncle Bert. They were married, and this is Sue's Auntie Edie and Paul, his girlfriend. And here comes Susan with her Uncle Fred, Auntie Edie's husband. That's my Uncle Bert, who's my godfather, my other godfather, Auntie Marge's husband. This is Susan and I coming out. It was a rather painful day for me because it was the first day I was allowed to actually walk on that leg that I broke in an industrial accident. In plaster, of course. It was a walking cast. Eileen there at the back, and Ian. Ian was the other usher. Michael stood at the back there behind John and Jason, with Eileen now and Joanne there. Obviously Susan. Susan, Eileen, Joanne, Becky, myself on crutches. I didn't want the crutches on my wedding photos, so I walked the stick. Michael there with me on one side, Eileen on the other side of Sue, and Dad, Mum, Michael, me, Joanne, Susan, Eileen, Becky, and Sue's Uncle Fred, and Auntie Edie, and Susan and myself, and my dad, my mum, and me on a very proud day. There's Jason, Colin, Ian, Ieleen, me, Susan, Michael, Colin. My dad, Colin, our chauffeur with his Merc, Steve, Uncle Ben, Auntie Glad, Mum, sister and brother, and of course the happy couple leaving the church. With my brother Ian videoing this because he's on the wedding picture that's taken the other way in the background with the movie camera. And confetti time, of course. The church was New Church Parish Church in Culture. We actually called it the Packhorse Church because just to the back of me is actually the Packhorse pub. It shared the same courtyard. Those are Polaroid photographs on the back of our wedding actually. Somebody put them on there so we could take them with us. And there's Ieleen. And finally, Susan and I in our new house, or our house. We moved into it 3 days before we got married. It was in London. It was called 8 Ivanhoe Avenue, off Scott Road. I hope you've enjoyed this video. It grieves me that I could not get better pictures, but the movies were taken on Standard 8 and Super 8 in the 60s and early 70s. And when my dad pieced them all together at one time into big tapes, he didn't put them in chronological order. Over the years, the light had got into them as well. I had some of them transferred onto videotape before we left England in '95. But even now, the videotape had perished somewhat, so I've managed to transfer them onto computer with an adapter I've now got. And from that, this is where these came from. It's nice to see those parts of my life where Ieleen was in the early days. It has more meaning probably to me than a lot of others in the family, but we miss her. always miss her. She'll always be my big sister. She always is my big sister. She still probably watches over me, just like she used to. Well, thank you for that, and God bless.